Please be seated.
Today's selection is from Exodus 20, verse 1 through 4. Then God spoke all these words. I am the Lord your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of slavery. You shall have no other gods before me. You shall not make for yourself an idol, whether in the form of anything that is in heaven above, or that is in the earth beneath, or that is in the water under the earth. And from Exodus 32, verses 1 through 10. When people saw that Moses delayed to come down from the mountain, the people gathered around Aaron and said to him, Come, make gods for us. Who shall go before us? As for this Moses, the man who brought us out of the land of Egypt, we do not know what has become of him. Aaron said to them, Take off the gold rings that are on the ears of your wives, your sons, and your daughters, and bring them to me. So all the people took off the gold rings from their ears and brought them to Aaron. He took the gold from them, formed it into a mold, and cast an image of a calf. And they said, These are our gods, O Israel, who brought you up out of the land of Egypt. When Aaron saw this, he built an altar before it. And Aaron made a proclamation and said, Tomorrow shall be a festival to the Lord. They rose early the next day and offered burnt offerings and brought sacrifices of well-being. And the people sat down to eat and drink and rose up to revel. The Lord said to Moses, Go down at once. Your people, whom you brought out of the land of Egypt, have acted perversely. They have been quick to turn aside from the way that I commanded them. They have cast for themselves an image of a calf and have worshipped it and sacrificed to it, he said. These are your gods, O Israel, who brought you up out of the land of Egypt. The Lord said to Moses, I have seen this people, how stiff-necked they are. Now let me alone, so that my wrath may burn hot against them, and I may consume them, and of you I will make a great nation.
Thank you, Dee Dee. They weren't all the way. Not yet. But they were getting close. After God freed the ancient Israelites from captivity, Egypt promises them a new home and leads them on a journey through the wilderness. The Israelites are not all the way there. Not yet. But they're close. And they are infused with a new spirit, a renewed sense of purpose, inspired by a new start to imagine new possibilities for who and what they can be as a community of God's people. Oh, wait. That's not right. No, they didn't. Instead, while their leader Moses is having some special one-on-one time with God up on Mount Sinai, receiving the 2 stone tablets on which the 10 Commandments are written, as well as instructions on how to build the ark, the tabernacle, the chest that those 2 stone tablets will be stored in, so that they can go with the people into their new homeland as a constant, tangible reminder of God's never-ending presence. While all of that is happening, the Israelites, the people, are getting a little impatient. Impatient to the point of not having Moses return and saying, to borrow an expression from our time, forget that guy. The people essentially say, forget Moses. they say, this Moses, dismissively. We don't know what he's up to, and we're not waiting to find out. They turn to Aaron, Moses' brother and associate leader, and say, hey, you build us some gods to go with us. But of course, Aaron, loyal and faithful to his brother Moses, the one who God chose to be the primary leader of the people. Aaron, also, of course, loyal and faithful to God, the same God who not long before had made it very clear to the people that they were not to worship other gods, and they were not to build idols out of anything in the heavens or on the earth or in the seas. Aaron, faithful and loyal to Moses and God, of course, tells the people, nope, not doing it, never going to happen. Oh, wait, that's not right either. Aaron does it. Aaron says to the people, give me your gold. And then Moses takes the gold, buys a private jet with it, making Moses the first documented TV televangelist. No. Bad me. Moses tells the people, give me your gold. They do. Aaron, I'm sorry, thank you. I knew that was going to happen at least once. Aaron says, give me your gold. They give it to him. He melts it down and forms a statue of a calf. A golden calf god. Calves, bulls, and such, in that time and place, common idols, common gods of worship for a number of the pagan tribes that the ancient Israelites lived among. Calves, bulls, and such, gods of things like strength and storms, and most frequently, gods of fertility. Remember that one. Aaron builds the golden calf god, and the people immediately go from not just forget Moses, but forget God. They immediately say, oh, this is the God who led us out of the wilderness, out of captivity in Egypt. And then Aaron declares that the next day is going to be a festival to the new golden calf god. When the day comes, the people sacrifice, offer burnt offerings to the new golden calf god. They worship. And then they have fellowship time. But their fellowship time that day is not exactly like the fellowship time that we're going to have in a little while. Because what we are told by the writer of Exodus is that the people rose up to revel. They rose up to revel. Remember a moment ago when I told you to keep that whole god of fertility thing in mind? Okay. Well, in the Hebrew that Exodus is originally written in, that phrase rise up or rose up to revel means to engage in, let's say, a pretty wild time, if you get my meaning. Okay. God, understandably, not impressed. God says to Moses, meeting's over. Get back down the mountain and fix this. Get down there and straighten out these stiff-necked people. Stiff-necked, a term from the ancient world that referred to a beast of burden, a labor animal that refused to do what was expected of it. Straighten out those stiff-necked people, God tells Moses, and leave me alone. Leave me alone to work up my anger. To work up my anger to the point where I am ready to do away with these people. But God doesn't. God doesn't do away with the people. Moses, in a message for another day, artfully talks God down. Unfortunately, Moses isn't so good at talking himself down. Because when he gets down to the bottom of the mountain and he sees the reveling, he smashes the 2 stone tablets with the 10 commandments on the ground. But he's just getting warmed up. Because then he takes the statue of the golden calf god, melts it down, mixes it with water, and makes the people drink it. Yeah. As one biblical scholar puts it, Moses literally makes the people eat their words. I can only imagine what God thought as he saw that. My guess is that God thought, wow, even I wouldn't do that. I also imagine that that wasn't the only thing that God thought while God was alone, or as one of the participants in this Thursday's Bible study session put it, while God was in God's self-imposed timeout. I imagine God thought a few other things. Like, for instance, I brought them out of the wilderness for this? And now, it's our turn. It's our turn. Today, we are not all the way there. Not yet. We're not back in the sanctuary. We don't have the full grounds of our church campus available. We are not all the way there. Not yet. But we're getting close. We're getting close. And so what now? God, after this long year's journey in the wilderness, has brought us here. Brought us out of the wilderness. For what? For what? Will we be infused with a new spirit, a renewed sense of purpose? Will we be inspired by this new start to imagine new possibilities for who and what we can be as a community of God's people? Or will we be like our ancient spiritual Israelite ancestors? Impatient. Maybe impatient if things all just don't go back to exactly the way they were. Or build idols out of things that are not God, like spaces and worship ways and rules. What will we be? Will we be what we were throughout our entire year in the wilderness? Will we continue to be that? Because during that year that we spent in the wilderness, we were compassionate and empathetic We were open to new and different ways of doing things. We improvised over and over and over again so that we could do the best that we could in terms of fulfilling what God asks of us. During our time in the wilderness, we were Spirit-led, not rule-led. And during our time in the wilderness, we sought to let God lead us to, as we put it in this morning's opening prayer, combine the best of what we were before Ian with new possibilities in this new time for being what God calls us to be as a community of God's people. Will we, in this time, succeed at success? Ed DeLautre, the late ethicist and former dean of the School of Education at Boston University, had a framework that he used to conceptualize the place that a group or an organization or a team or a community or even an individual person was at a particular place in time. DeLautre conceptualized that a group or an organization or a team or a community or a person at any given time was in one of four places. The first place, failing at failure. Now let's be clear. What DeLautre means by failure in this framework is any place that is undesirable, whether it is of our own making or not. Okay? For example, Ian. Okay? Failing at failure, which for DeLautre meant being in an undesirable place and either giving up or being unwilling to learn and change and grow to make things better. Second place, succeeding at failure, which DeLautre meant as being in an undesirable place, but refusing to give up and being willing to learn and change and grow to make things better. The third place, failing at success, by which DeLautre meant being in a desirable place or clearly on the way there, but being unwilling to continue to learn and grow and change, becoming complacent or ego-driven, or staying in place out of fear of more change. And then the fourth place, succeeding at success, by which DeLautre meant being in a desirable place or clearly on the way there, and being willing to continually look to learn and change and grow, to continually make things better. Sometimes that meant staying the same in some ways, in other ways, not. Succeeding at success. In the earlier stages of the book of Exodus, for the most part, the Israelites are succeeding at failure, okay? In that they have allowed God, they have followed God's lead out of captivity. They have followed God's lead through the wilderness. They are succeeding at the failure, again, not of their own making, of having been in captivity. Okay? Often it is one step forward, two steps back. Sometimes one step back, two steps forward. But for the most part, succeeding at failure. But in this scene, at this point, as they are so close to being all the way there, they fail at success. They fail at success. They become impatient. They become too concerned with the who and the what. They resist change out of fear. They revert back to unhelpful beliefs and behaviors when uncertainty and anxiety arise. What about us? What about us? Will we succeed at success now that we are this far and so close to being all the way there? I believe, I know that we will. We will if we continue to be who and what we were during our long year in the wilderness. I know that we will if we continue to follow the lead of the one who brought us out of the wilderness. And if we do, God won't wonder, I brought them out of the wilderness for this? Instead, God will say, yeah, I brought them out of the wilderness for this. Amen.